Welcome to this special episode of The Switch. My name is Jake Burleski, Nonprofit HR's Marketing and Communication Associate. Today we have an amazing episode for you, where we will hear from another excellent woman named to Nonprofit HR's 2023 Social Impact Women to Watch list. Each year during Women's History Month, Nonprofit HR proudly recognizes women across North America who have made significant contributions to nonprofits, associations, foundations, social enterprises, and the communities that they serve. This special series of The Switch features the 24 finalists named to this year's list due to their extraordinary leadership, unwavering dedication, and impactful achievements. In this episode, Lindsay Otto, our Marketing Communication Associate for Editorial and Content, sits down with Jenny Malseed, VP of Strategy and Talent for GlobalGiving. Throughout the conversation, we'll learn more about Jenny's stellar contributions to the sector. Jenny co-leads strategic planning with the CEO and leads global initiatives to improve operational effectiveness, reduce risk, and grow fundraising. She is passionate about transforming organizations and building amazing teams that highlight each person's unique talents. Jenny previously led strategy at Child Fund, worked as a strategy consultant at IBM, and supported education and private sector development projects in Africa. She began her career as a Peace Corps volunteer in Benin, where she honed her French skills and fell in love with West African culture and cuisine. Since 2008, she has served as a board chair of the Benin Education Fund. Jenny also earned her MBA from the Yale School of Management. Now she lives in Alexandria, Virginia, with her husband and 2 sons. You can find this recording at nonprofithr.com/The Switch, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts. So without further ado, here's Lindsay and Jenny.
Hello, Jenny, and welcome to The Switch. I'm so glad to be sitting down to chat with you today.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's so great to be here.
I want to congratulate you again for being named a Nonprofit HR 2023 Social Impact Women to Watch finalist. We're really excited about the work that you're doing as the VP of Strategy and Talent at GlobalGiving. And from what I understand, this is a nonprofit that connects nonprofits to donors and companies to access tools, training, and support that they need, and that your mission is to transform aid and philanthropy to accelerate community-led change. I'm so excited to learn more about this and about you. So tell me first about, your role at the organization and what drew you to this mission specifically, as well as the social impact space in general.
Sure, yeah. So as you said, I'm the head of strategy and talent at GlobalGiving. I joined in 2019, right before the pandemic, unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, but I kind of grew into that role. And I'm excited. I started off in more of a strategy role, which is more my background. It became clear that it would make sense to combine strategy and talent, or HR, together, because as you're changing, as you're transforming, it's all about your people. And so it just made sense to us to combine those two. I also oversee innovation and organizational learning. So that's sort of the portfolio is really everything related to people and strategy and change, which is great. What drew me to GlobalGiving, as you said, our mission is to transform aid and philanthropy to accelerate community-led change. And so we work with thousands of nonprofits in almost every country in the world. And as you said, we're providing support, but really we're trying to increase funding and access to tools, et cetera, so that they can achieve their missions. We are a nonprofit as well. And for me, we like to talk about putting communities in the driver's seat of change. We believe that those who are closest to an issue or an opportunity are the best place to solve it or go after it. And so for me, I've always been drawn to the social impact space. I started my career as a Peace Corps volunteer in a small West African country called Benin. And the most important lesson I learned while I was there was humility. You go over to help and you think, oh, I'm going to be doing this great stuff. You're a starry-eyed, you graduated from college and you think you have these great skills. And then you quickly realize that you have so much more to learn than you do to teach, and you're just lucky to be there. That actually applies to our sector a little bit as well. And why I'm excited to be at GlobalGiving is I think that international global development sector has really been shifting and seeing actually we can be a bit paternalistic, we can lack humility, and that really we need to be engaging communities or engaging people who are closest to the problem to solve it. And luckily we're seeing those shifts, but we know that there's a lot more that's needed, and GlobalGiving is trying to do that.
That's incredible. So that sort of brings me to my second question. I want to talk uniquely about your experiences and your qualities, and your role is very unique at your organization, the intersection of strategy and talent in the way that you've structured that. And so I'd love to hear more about that. And so for you personally, what unique qualities would you say that you bring to the community that your organization has built and is building, and how has that advanced your impact?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with a story, which is that early in my career, I was working at nonprofits, in Peace Corps, and then a little bit later. And I felt like they weren't necessarily doing a great job managing their people or cultivating their talent. It really struck me all of a sudden. I said, well, wait a minute. If you're doing social services, your people are literally everything. They are your entire value proposition because you are serving others. We don't have a ton of valuable physical assets like buildings or artwork. We have intellectual capital, but because of our mission, if we do, we're sharing it, not hoarding it. We're giving it away. We want people to have more knowledge, right? And so all of our value is wrapped up in our people. That's so important. And so for me, that has really shaped, my career. And so thinking about then global giving and how it comes together, we're really trying to take responsibility, as I said, for shifting the power dynamics. And we talk about decolonization of wealth, for example. So thinking about colonialism and thinking about racism, thinking about slavery. There are these dynamics that cause the world to be how it is. And being able to shift resources, shift power from those who have it to those who need it as much as we can feels incredibly important to me right now, and is really something that I strive to do both inside the organization and then to support our organization to do it outside. So my career is really all about this deep belief that every one of us, no matter who we are, has unique talents. And as leaders or as people with power, it's our responsibility to create the conditions for every person to thrive, including empowering them and providing resources, et cetera. The one other thing I'll say is that at Global Giving, it's really about being a nice person. And I'm lucky that I've stepped into an organization that cares about that, but I hope I've been able to cultivate it. And interestingly, a staff member recently in a survey, when asked about our culture, said, be freaking decent to each other as human beings. That was how they described our culture. And I was like, I love that because we just need more of that. So that's what I try to do, is be freaking decent to other people as human beings.
Oh, very candid, very just honest, straightforward way of saying it. Absolutely. I'm sure that definitely speaks to the kind of culture that you have as well. So that's wonderful. And so with all those people that you work with, how would you say that you bring others along as a leader or mobilize others, such as your employees, your colleagues, your community members, toward that shared vision or goal?
Because of the role I'm in now, I'll focus more on kind of internally our staff. And although I think this applies everywhere. So I can't remember where I first heard this, but I've now repeated it often, which is that relationships are the currency for change. So if you want to drive change, building relationships and building that trust absolutely has to come first. And when it comes to trust, ultimately, if you're talking about change or asking people to do something that's different or maybe more than they were doing, it's extra effort generally. And in organizations in particular, we've all talked about change is happening so much and so fast. Everyone is needing to change all the time. Like that is just the work, the way that we are now and the way that we're living post-COVID, but even pre-COVID, that was starting. And again, that's all about trust. And so what helps you to trust me? I really love the concept of the pillars of trust. So one of the pillars of trust is a belief in positive intent. So in other words, you believe that I have a positive intent, not a malicious intent. And what would get you to believe that? Well, that goes back to relationships, right? Just getting to know me or knowing me a little bit as a person or just seeing me. Another one is competence, another pillar of trust. So you believe that I have competence or expertise. That goes beyond relationships. That gets into clarity, that gets into communications, that gets into strategic vision. But those are some of the things that we're really focused on when we're trying to drive change. And I think, just like a lot of organizations, I'm sure I'll be candid and say Global Giving has struggled the past few years, going remote, going hybrid. We've also grown. We've doubled our staff in the past few years, and building those relationships and maintaining that trust is hard. And I know everyone's struggling with it. And, the other thing is that people are really burned out. And so how do you find that balance between, finding time for relationships, finding time to build trust? And people are like, I just don't want to work anymore. I'm just tired. I just want to do my thing and go home. But yeah, so it all comes back to then from a nonprofit, it goes back to the strategy piece, which is how do we re-energize and recharge around what are we trying to do together? What is our vision? What is our goal? And then, we can kind of find it in ourselves to keep going forward.
Absolutely. Trust is such a key part of a strong culture. Absolutely. And I would imagine, with our Zoom work these days, it makes it even harder to build that kind of trust that, was previously easier to.
Looking to integrate talent into your mission strategic plan? During annual strategic planning, organizations often overlook what talent is needed to meet their goals. Partner with Nonprofit HR for your organization's talent management needs. We offer HR outsourcing and project-based consulting, including strategy and advisory, retained search, total rewards, and equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice. We also offer customized trainings for your workforce. Join the many social impact organizations that have trusted Nonprofit HR to help them increase mission impact through their people. Visit nonprofithr.com.
And so as a leader, what is the most important thing you've learned in this space?
So I'll share a couple of things. That this podcast is probably primarily consumed by people who work in nonprofits, so they will not be surprised. No one will be surprised to hear this, but it is way, way harder than the corporate space. It's also so much more rewarding, right? But I've had the benefit of doing both. I spent 8 years at IBM as a strategy consultant. So I've seen both sides of it. And I say that it's way harder because, if I had a dollar for every time someone has said like what the nonprofit world needs is more business experience. And certainly that's helpful, but the truth is it's just really different. Part of that is around decision-making. As a leader in this space, one of the things that I've remarked on is, let's say in the corporate world, and this goes back to say my IBM experience, at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, it better be either increasing revenue, decreasing costs, or ideally both, increasing profitability. In the nonprofit space, that's like this much of the calculation, right? So you're trying to do an ROI analysis, your return on investment. Well, your return has to be about your social impact as well as your financials, but your financials aren't even clear because every dollar that you get in, you might not be able to spend it in the way that you want because it might be restricted. And so it's just like these 17 other hoops that you have to jump through. And so as a leader, again, like really what I've learned is the importance of talking about that with staff and helping people understand. It can be frustrating about things like, why is it hard to make decisions, or why can't we do X, Y, Z? And it can be that people are oriented heavily on the social impact side. It could be that they're oriented heavily on the financial side, and kind of pulling that all together and communicating it is really, really important. We talk a lot about our business model. How do we create, capture value? That's really important, and that everyone kind of builds a shared understanding of that so that then the context is really clear. So I think that's one of the most important things I've learned.
Yeah, being transparent and communicating that, I'm sure, also contributes to the building of trust that your staff has.
Yeah, for sure.
Bringing it back to, your people and your people management style, what would you say that your people management philosophy is in engaging mission-driven talent?
So I love this question. And there are two things about nonprofit staff that I think are important to know as I answer this. And again, this audience may be like, yeah. But first of all, listening and continuously seeking feedback about what you're doing and changes you might be making is essential. And that's because staff care so deeply about the work and the mission, and they're incredibly thoughtful about even the seemingly smallest changes, because they're thinking those could have ripple effects in how we perform, how we serve, and our mission. And so you need to be constantly asking them what they think and bringing them along on the journey. And related to that, nonprofit staff, at least where I've worked, tend to have a lot of agency, right? You don't join a nonprofit unless you think like, I can help, I can do something, I can make the world a better place. And so when you have that agency, then you want to exercise it. And so if you have leaders that aren't asking for it or aren't allowing you to exercise it, there's going to be a lot of tension. And so it's really important to engage that agency and engage it in a productive way. So we spend a lot of time, kind of working on and thinking about what are the most effective ways for us to engage staff and, help them inform everything that we're doing. The other point that's really important is diversity and how critical that is. Years ago, I was talking to a colleague about our need to bring in staff with different lived experiences, and including those in other countries. And this individual argued, well, that's expensive and it's hard, and what's the business case? I understand why that person was asking those questions, but I finally asked, I said, have you ever worked closely with people from other countries? And the person paused and they had to say no. And I said, I can't possibly explain to you the richness of the perspectives that you gain that you have no idea you would even have to ask for, the richness of those perspectives. And that's one aspect of diversity, but there's so many, but it just convinced me so deeply how important that is. And so how that translates to my people management philosophy, it's a lot about getting input. It's a lot about providing context for people and engaging and coaching. So less go do X and more. Let's provide you with a lot of information and let's have a how might we conversation. So we're trying to do this. How might we do that? And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Lots of wisdom in there. I can definitely see how that's helping and advancing your organization. And so since this honor is for Women's History Month, what advice would you give to those looking to inspire women specifically in the same way that you have?
Women are not a monolith, of course. So I struggle a little bit with this question because I just know so many different, diverse, unique women that bring so many different things to the table. So I think one would be, don't consider them as a monolith. And then that builds on, consider the unique talents and the voice that they might bring. I think in my experience, I have worked with a number of women who struggle with imposter syndrome or, just aren't sure that they deserve a seat at the table. We've all seen the research that women are less likely to apply for a job unless they meet all of the qualifications, whereas men will apply if they meet like half of the qualifications. So things like that. So I think really lifting up women and encouraging them, taking the time and, providing that context so that they can engage fully, I think is so important. And it's so critical in the nonprofit sector. The challenges that we're dealing with are so complex. We need everyone's best. We need everyone's minds. And so we need to create that space. It's our job as leaders.
And so tying back to your mission, what is the greatest hope for your mission for the future? And how do you see yourself bringing that hope to fruition for your organization?
Oh my gosh, I have so many hopes. Let me try to boil it down to a few. So as you can tell, I believe really deeply in this idea of putting communities in the driver's seat of change. And we get lots of feedback from our nonprofit partners that what we're doing and what we're offering is incredibly valuable and helpful to them. So for example, our most recent net promoter score was 64 and our satisfaction was 8.5 out of 10. Those are pretty strong scores. I feel really good about that. And yet I was looking at the numbers last year, 3,228 nonprofit organizations working in 167 countries received funding through GlobalGiving. So that sounds great, over 3,000, 167 countries, but researchers estimate, there's no actual good number, but researchers estimate that there are over 15 million registered nonprofits around the world. There's not a single definitive count, and certainly not all of them are good or effective. Every country is different. It can be easy to register as a nonprofit. So I don't want to make it sound like every one of them is doing good work, but certainly a lot of them are. And there's a huge gap between what we've been able to do and our potential impact. Being able to grow our impact is really important. I think the other one, and this is related, is just to give an example, last year we were really blessed. We raised over $66 million from nearly 200,000 people to support Ukrainians who are suffering as a result of Russia's massive invasion. And we were all really humbled by that and grateful to be part of it. And for me, it's personal because my husband, my mother-in-law is Ukrainian. So I have that on my side of the family. So that felt really good and helpful. At the same time, millions of people around the world are living through crises and their stories are rarely heard. The mainstream media may not hear about them. And we actually, unfortunately, saw that some funding that may have gone to certain crises like hunger relief in East Africa got sort of redirected to Ukraine. And so we're always thinking about, okay, how do we, going back to shifting the power and using our power to address the needs that there are, how can we then bring that spotlight and that voice to communities that may not be getting it in the mainstream media. And we've done some things like opening up a Hope in Crisis Fund to support partners that are doing critical work in Democratic Republic of Congo and Yemen, for example. But that still feels like small. We want to do so much more. To summarize, when you ask about my hope is, number one, that we can provide significantly more support to organizations around the world. And number two, that we can do it in ways that address the needs and the opportunities where they are. As for my role in that, as I said, I'm blessed to lead both strategy and talent. So I get to cultivate and align our incredible talent in pursuit of our strategy to do those things. And how do I do that? It's all about, my staff are so tired of me saying this, but prioritization and sequencing. So you can't do everything all at once, but you have to think about, what do you want to do? And Global Giving has been really opportunistic and entrepreneurial over the years, which has been great. But now we're needing to add in some of that discipline, some of that multi-year planning, and saying, okay, if not now, when? We do want to do these things that we can take bit by bit at a time. My role in that is really thinking about, what is the employee experience that we want to have. We talk about the future of work, hybrid, remote, culture, et cetera, and really being purposeful and cultivating that so that we are all aligning behind those goals, and then in a way that employees are having a great experience while they do it.
Wow, that's incredible. Just having support for all of those different missions is definitely something I can see could have unlimited growth for your organization. And wrapping up here in our last few minutes, do you have any parting words that you would like to leave with our audience?
You know, I'm still learning every single day and figuring this all out as I go. And I don't bring the strong HR background. I've kind of worked my way into it from the strategy side. So I guess my parting words would be to really push that partnership between the strategy side of the house and the HR side of the house, because we found it, I think, so far to be really exciting and really fruitful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for coming on the show today and sharing your story, your advice, your expertise, and, all the work that your mission and your organization is doing. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's our show for today. There were so many great moments in this conversation with Jenny and Lindsay, but my biggest takeaway was on leadership. More specifically, how Jenny prioritizes the individual, highlighting the unique skills of each employee to increase the overall effectiveness of the whole team in order to push their mission forward. I hope you found this episode as valuable as I did. Once again, we thank you for listening to The Switch. If you're looking for more episodes of The Switch, visit nonprofithr.com/The Switch, where you can access recordings and resources to help your organization maximize its greatest asset, your people.